I forget where I was going before I made the stupid joke.
Oh, you're so funny. You forgot what you were going to say.
What was I talking about? Cast Iron Brains, a podcast that doesn't care for any of a great number of cliches, but has particular disdain for the colloquial definition of insanity that is trotted out 50 times an hour by very wise morons everywhere. That insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. First of all, this is not insanity. It is merely stupidity in most contexts, and also sort of just the scientific method in many other contexts. It is perfectly rational to do the same thing over and over again and see if the results change. See if you are dealing with rules or laws or just coincidence. In 2015 and 2016, the cable news networks bent over backwards to give candidate Donald Trump as much coverage as they possibly could. Shots of empty tarmacs, cameras pointed to the sky awaiting the Trump plane. Every speech covered in full, every tweet read live and analyzed and gushed over. They gave him more free press than anyone in history. And afterwards, after we had made him the President of the United States, they said about all that coverage they did, maybe that was bad. We should learn from that. Something. What exactly? Unclear. But let's learn something. So watching the coverage today, watching the wall-to-wall cable news coverage of the front door of Trump Tower for hours, and then the motorcade as he made his way 4 miles across town to the courthouse, and then the hallway outside the courtroom after he went inside, I didn't think about the definition of insanity, but I did worry that we might be experiencing a Vonnegut-esque timequake in which we had all suddenly jumped back some number of years and had to watch in terror as we all made the same stupid choices again, prisoners of everything we had chosen to do before, witnessing the same stupid things happen again and again as we make the least curious, least good, least interested person on the planet the very center of our collective attention and hope things turn out different this time. But they won't. In a timequake, they can't, until hopefully we are shaken awake, told that we are sentient once again, that we were sick, but we're well again, and there's work to do. My name is Bob, sitting across the way from my good friend and co-host. That's Abe. How you doing tonight, Abe?
Doing well, Bob.
Yeah, here we are. Lori's here too. How you doing tonight, Lori?
No.
Lori's, yeah. Tonight is Tuesday, April 4th, 2023. We bumped back our podcast recording last night because of the big news that was going to happen today, Trump's arrest and arraignment over the indictment as brought by, what is it, Alvin Bragg in Manhattan there?
Yeah.
Just in case shit got wild and we didn't want to have to do a back-to-back emergency podcast, as obviously we are wont to do, is all those emergency pods that we have in the. And besides, there was a big basketball game on last night, right?
Oh, that's right, UConn.
I'm sure we all watched.
I didn't watch it.
No, didn't watch. I watched
baseball.
4 seconds. Watched the Braves game instead, and it was actually funny. Before going to bed last night, I looked at my phone, and I had gotten a text from Mark Gillig, the composer of the show's opening and closing themes.
UConn alum.
Yeah, UConn alum. Jerry.
And that's not like the Yukon Trail for the people who listen that don't know.
Right.
The university, the letter U of Connecticut.
Not the vast expanse
misleading.
of ice and snow in Canada, but instead the University of Connecticut. One of the few schools with a good shortening that's not just the letters of their school, right? Like UVA or UGA, but right. UConn. Like it works. It's clever.
That is
I like
true.
It.
Yeah.
Anyway, I didn't even realize that the championship game was going on until I looked at my phone and saw that I had text from Mark Gillig, who texted me at some point, insurmountable lead, game over. And I was like, Is he watching the Braves game? Like,
Yeah.
is he? What? Wait,
And his ending lead
Gillick
in
doesn't
baseball
text me
instrumental.
about the Braves. What?
Yeah.
Oh, the basketball game was on
The
tonight.
national
That's what
championship
that was
game.
about. I'd gotten a further text last week from the Thousand Man Jerry, who said that you should just let your kids become UConn basketball fans. And I texted back, gross. And he said he gave a lengthy defense of UConn as an institution and as an athletic endeavor and all
Jerry,
of
we
that.
can't.
And I said, no, Jerry, basketball is the gross thing, not rooting for UConn.
Also,
like, who cares? No, we're just not going to make them basketball
We're
fans.
not going to make them basketball fans because it's impossible. But also, we live in Charlottesville. Like, there is no. Why are you a UConn fan from a UVA fan? It's like, oh, because my dad's friend wanted me to be. Like, you don't get to defend that here.
Right.
Anyway, UConn runs away with it. Apparently kind of a boring game that got close for like a minute with like 5 minutes to go. Got within 5 points, and then San Diego State folded, and UConn wins, what is that, their 5th men's title? Something like that?
Apparently, yeah, number 5.
That's a lot for a school that's not UCLA or Kentucky or
UNC or something, right?
Right. That is a lot.
So congratulations to all the happy people in our audience. Mark and Thousand Man Jerry, both of you, big UConn people. The world did not fall apart. There were not, a couple of hundred people maybe in total on the streets. If you eliminate all media from the equation, then there were just way fewer people than usual on the streets of New York than you would expect to see just walking about out in the world. And obviously, as you can tell from my open there, I'm a bit, perhaps less than a bit, ambivalent about the whole thing, bordering on angry about the sort of coverage that I witnessed today.
Were you expecting more than what came out? You know, because like this is, a lot of this stuff was kind of like leaked through the press over the last week or two, right? Like it ended up being 30-something counts of the same thing, basically.
Right, 34 felony counts that are really just one thing, which is that he continued to write checks to Michael Cohen in order to pay him back for the hush money payment to Stormy Daniels. They call that 34 separate felony counts, which is like the fact that, like, if you told me ahead of time it's 34 felony counts, I would have said, oh, wow, there must be a lot more here than we have so far heard. This must involve some of the tax stuff. There must be some new information that we have not yet found out about. But instead, it's just the Stormy Daniels stuff and the fact that he was...
And there's like another woman and like some doorman who was trying to shake him down.
But he's just... All it is Michael Cohen, his fixer, who would make payments out in order to catch and kill stories. It's just him then paying Cohen back instead of for legal services. What he's really doing is paying off the debt that he owes Michael Cohen for being the person who's in charge of distributing these funds to the various people that he's trying to keep quiet, which is not illegal, by the way. The part that's illegal is the part where he says, this is a business expense. These are legal fees going to my attorney through the Trump organization rather than just coming out of Trump's own personal checkbook himself, which then becomes wound into this campaign donation, essentially, if they can prove that he was doing this to stop it from becoming an election issue, right?
Yeah, and there seems to be a lot of stacking of charges to make it seem bigger than it is, and I imagine that's done for impact, right? Because if you're not paying any attention and you wake up tomorrow and you look at the news about what happened on Tuesday, you would hear 34 counts of a felony, upwards of 100 and plus years, if you do the stupid, implausible stacking of sentences.
Yes, if he's not going to serve these very minor Class E felonies concurrently, and instead somehow is sentenced to back-to-back felony convictions where he has to serve them each one after another consecutively, then he could be in jail for the next 136 years. Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Do we think that is anywhere within the realm of human possibility?
Right. It's done just so it can have like, wow, this must be serious. And it seems like that kind of undermines, like the more you look into it, you're like, well, wait a minute, this is all about this one thing from 7 years ago. There was some...
this one thing that on its own doesn't matter is not a crime, right?
Right.
Just the thing itself, there is no crime in paying somebody a pile of money, a fairly modest pile of money, by the way, if you are a billionaire and you don't want your wife to find out that you, in all likelihood, paid Stormy Daniels to sleep with you, right? Like to me, what was it? $130,000 was the Stormy payment, something along those lines, right?
$130 for her, $150 for the other one, and then $30,000 for the doormat.
Right. In terms of as a percentage of his alleged net worth, not that big a deal. Relative to like price per sexual act, quite high. Right. But on any scale that I have previously been aware of.
Not that they keep track of that sort of thing.
Right. I haven't wanted to talk about this up until now, knowing, of course, that it would all crest and we would sort of be forced to talk about it. But I have been less than even remotely interested in talking about it. And I couldn't even really figure out why, because obviously it's a big, important deal that a former president has been criminally indicted by a state supreme court, by a state district attorney. Like, obviously, that's a tremendously important development, but also it just feels like of such a piece with everything that has come before since 2015, and it has allowed everyone in public life to perform the exact same reaction, the exact same hysterics that they've been performing since 2015. No matter what side you're on, whether you're a committed anti-Trump Democrat or anti-Trump Republican, or you're a committed Trump partisan, it is just precisely more of the same of what we've seen over and over again through countless news cycles over the last 8 years. And I have no interest in engaging with it whatsoever.
One thing that caught my eye when I was watching the coverage, like after the whole thing was done, I was listening, and somebody characterizes basically what they're doing is that they're bundling like one case that they're trying to prove, which is he broke some sort of election law, with a uncharged some other thing to make it into a felony, right? So like the money plus the reason makes it a felony. And the way somebody characterized it as one of these lawyers that they bring on was that this is treated as a untested legal theory. That can you actually do that? Like, 'cause he wasn't charged with the other thing.
He wasn't charged with breaking federal election law by the people who can charge him with breaking federal election law, right?
Right.
The Justice Department has determined that this is not a case worth pursuing. Now, like, I get it. I get the gut instinct to want to humiliate Trump. And no matter what he says about it, I don't know what he's saying tonight. In fact, I think we're going to go live look in right now at what Trump is saying as he speaks in Florida. He flew back from
New York City.
And we're just going to get a quick live look in at what he's saying in Florida. All right, that's the former president speaking in Florida tonight after he was arraigned in New York. I don't know.
That was Katie as a baby, actually.
Yes, also sounded a great deal like our daughter when she was an infant.
She was a baby.
Anyway, I get the instinct to want to humiliate him, right? I think that no matter what he says tonight or what he said leading up to it, this is humiliating for him in a personal way that a lot of the other stuff has not been. It sucks to get arrested and to go before a judge, even if you think that the whole thing's a fraud. It doesn't feel good, and he's never experienced that before, despite sort of constantly skirting the knife's edge of what is technically legal and just barely avoiding a whole host of legal trouble throughout his entire career. He's a fucking fraud. Of course he's been living on an edge. But I just don't see what the virtue is. If we're going to talk about this in terms of consequences, and watching Alvin Bragg today, watching his press conference at 4 o'clock, where he just kept harping on this idea that, in Manhattan, we're the financial center of the entire universe, and it's important that we prosecute business crimes and falsifying business documents. That's our bread and butter here in Manhattan. That's what we do better than anybody else in the world. It's like, you've got to be fucking kidding me, man.
Right.
You can't indict a former president because he lied about the various ways he was arranging hush money for the porn star he was banging. Like, the feds already decided that this was not worth pursuing, perhaps in no small part because of the deranging effect that it has on the entire system, right? And I don't think that can be overstated. We don't know what the long-term consequences are going to be, but fucking God forbid Donald Trump is the president again. Is there any doubt that he's going to weaponize the various agencies that are at his disposal in the same way that this has been done? Is there any? So the line that you keep hearing on cable news on the Fox side, and I even saw it on CNN a couple of times today from the less obviously left-leaning partisans that they have on, was this idea that there's no way in hell that anybody else not named Donald Trump would be prosecuted for these offenses, right? Now, setting aside the fact that there isn't anyone else who could be prosecuted for these offenses, right? Like, that has to be folded into your evaluation here, right? But given that fact, if someone else had done this who was not Donald Trump, if this was a Democrat, for example, is there any chance in hell that Alvin Bragg indicts on falsifying these business documents? And I think it's pretty clear that the answer is no. This is what Chris Christie was saying on ABC. Obviously, he's a partisan, but he can't stand Trump. But he was on the ABC this week suggesting that there's no way in hell that this happens if this is anybody besides Donald Trump. Jeb Bush, famously run over by the Trump steamroller in 2015, 2016, came out. So people who are committed anti-Trump Republicans have been saying that there's no way this happens to anybody but Trump. Do you think that that's true? Do you think that's a valid criticism, and does it matter?
I think that is true, but then if you asked me before this happened, I would have said that no one would have been brought up on these charges, right? Like, including Trump. Like, it's unusual that this was brought up, and especially the way, I always thought, people say, no one's above the law, blah, blah, blah. That's nonsense. Even though I do think presidents are above some laws, but let's set that aside. The people who say, president's above the law, the people who are bringing on charges, I do think should, because of the unusual nature, there's only been like 45 of these people, right? And most of them are dead. There's not that many presidents, right? Living or current or former presidents. So if you were to bring a case, it's got to be to use a language from the basketball world, a slam dunk case, right? You need to have slam dunk cases, and even if it was something ticky-tacky, like this comes across, like this money stuff seems kind of ticky-tacky, I thought, at the very least, they will have the goods, and this will be a black and white thing. Like, there are some other cases that are more important but harder to prove. And I thought this is like a low-level thing, but like, they got him. Dead to rights. There's no way out of it. And so when I'm hearing untested legal theory and it's pretty weak and they're trying to do this.
I forget where I read it. I might not even be able to track it down. But I read something that said that if they can prove that he was trying to keep this from messing up his election chances, that's fine. If then his defense can say, but also he was worried about it embarrassing him on a personal level with regard to his marriage and screwing up his marriage. If it's both things, then the fact that it also had a material benefit to his election doesn't matter. That in this case, all he has to prove is that. And I don't know if that's true or not. I don't know how precisely the law works. And I don't know how reliable this thing that I was.
I always thought whenever you have to prove like what their intent was, I always thought those were bad laws because it's kind of like hard to prove, right? I mean, if somebody did offer an alternative explanation, that sows doubt as to what you're claiming. Like, you can't exclude that as one of the possibilities as for my motivation, right?
To say nothing of the fact that the Access Hollywood tape, grab him by the pussy, had no material impact on his ability to get elected. To say nothing of the fact that his long history of alleged sexual assaults and sexual harassment and sexual impropriety generally had no impact on his ability to get elected as the president of the United States, right? So that actually matters.
That does matter. Actually, that was kind of what I was going to get to. Like when they're saying this wouldn't have happened to anybody other than Trump. Like, I can't think of an action that somebody needed to do less than him because he's so impervious to any sort of like flack. Like if the story just, came out, right? If there wasn't like a catch and kill kind of thing with the Inquirer, and if the Stormy Daniels story expose comes out, he would weather it just like he does everything else, right? So like there's no one who needs to like, oh, I am like running this airtight, like pure campaign and I can't have some stripper or porn star undermining that, right? Like it would have just been absorbed into what people already think of Trump, right? So like he actually had no need. Now, if he then says, like if his lawyers argue that, saying like, look, come on, what are you talking about? There was no political angle there. It's just coincidence. And more to the point, he was having a thing with his spouse, right? That is the more, glaring issue, that there was some sort of thing. Like I think she was pregnant at the time or whatever. Right? So like that was the primary focus. And so this legal nonsense where somebody signed something, it's because of that and not for this other reason. And if they make a compelling enough case of that, the case is over, right? Like he would skate. And this would look like it looks kind of shaky as it is, but it would be a total disaster if you didn't even get a conviction of these like trumped up, so to speak, charges.
There's no way they're getting a conviction here. I'm sorry. There's absolutely no way that there's going to be a jury of 12 people who insist that this convoluted legal theory that he broke federal election law and that therefore he must be convicted for felonies in New York, after his lawyers are going to say the Federal Justice Department of the United States elected not to prosecute him on these charges because they didn't think that and then they can mischaracterize Merrick Garland's understanding of the situation all they want, right? Because Merrick Garland took no action.
The saving grace, the saving grace, I think, because like right now, this indictment can't stand alone. If the focus is on this indictment, then Alvin Bragg, I think the whole thing is the wheels are going to come undone. If this causes the others, or independently of this case, if other indictments are brought against Trump that are stronger, and all the other cases seem, at least on the surface, stronger, then people kind of forget this. I think like in the history, like it's like this is the date and this is when it happened for the first time. But if it happens multiple times against the same person, it'll kind of be taken as a whole. And if any one of those things sticks, the story will be indicted and convicted. But if this stands alone and he gets off, then what a disaster.
Right. And if you think that this is anything but, I know, and I said earlier that this was humiliating for him and it obviously doesn't feel good and this is not something that he wanted to happen. But today, the Trump campaign sends out, and by the way, they raised $4 million in the first couple of hours after the indictment drops, after news of it comes out. They raise a big pile of money right on that immediately. And today, the campaign sends out fundraising emails with fake mugshots of Donald Trump. There was not a mugshot taken of him today.
Great choice by that court. To do still photography only and no mugshot, just to take any circus-related things out of the picture.
Right, but by the way, there's no and this idea that somehow he got special treatment because he wasn't going to get a mugshot or something along those lines. That's not true. When you come in on your own and you are not processed through any prison because you're going to be released on your own recognizance, apparently in the New York system you don't get a mugshot taken. They might take your picture as they transport you around the courthouse because you are technically under arrest at that point. Right. You're in the custody of the district attorney's office and therefore under arrest. For some of these white-collar criminals, they might take their picture, but it's not technically a mugshot. The only time you get your mugshot taken is when you are processed through a prison situation and you have to like bail out and all of that. And that is not the case for this, and it was not to have been expected. And for some reason, people were treating it like he's getting special treatment and that's why he's not getting the mugshot. That's not true. There was no mugshot, but that didn't stop the campaign from sending out an email with a fake Trump mugshot as a means of raising money. So this idea that this is going to hurt him with anyone who isn't already in his pile, and if anything is going to close ranks with a broader percentage of the Republican base, I think that's obvious. I don't see any other way of interpreting this other than it completely reinforces whatever your prior understanding of the situation was.
Right. But this is a further proof of how much of an outlier president he is, because to turn what is a bad news story into a fundraising opportunity and to have political.
But it's the same thing. I'm sorry. It's just the same thing that we've been dealing with for 8 years.
But with
which is
him,
that
though, that's what I'm saying.
A
That's why it's
demonstrably
unusual.
bad thing happens to Donald Trump, right? He does something awful, or he says something awful, and everyone's like, holy shit, what the fuck is wrong with this guy? And it is in the holy shitting that we're doing, and in the focus of all of our collective attention on him, that his base raises him up as their tribune, right? He is the most perfect victim any time that he gets to be the center of attention, and it's just the same shit over and over again for a decade.
But it's kind of rallying around somebody to political ruin, though, right? I mean, like, this is not 2015 in the sense that, like, he's kind of a known product now as a politician, not just as a celebrity, but as a politician. He's not going to win in a general, right? He's the one candidate who has such, like, people have such very strong opinions about him that you already can do the math from the 2018 midterm, 2020 presidential, 22 midterms. Like, all those did not go towards him, right? And so, like, yes, he will be a formidable opponent for the GOP primary, but, like, all of the people that are not in his, like, immediate orbit are going to say, what is the point of you winning this if you're going to lose then to old man Joe again, right?
There was a big part of the 2022 election cycle was the careful what you wish for Democrats aspect of who they were hoping to face in a lot of the congressional races and the governor's races, right? Where the DNC funded through advertisement buys in various markets the less appealing candidate. They would give money to the bomb thrower. They would give money to
the MAGA, like, heavy person. The person who's like, oh, this election is rigged, blah, blah, blah.
Right. So the prime example that sticks out in my head is that they ran Peter Meyer out of Congress by funding his opponent. And who knows if you can point directly at that. I think that a lot of the DNC people would proudly point to a lot of these races and say, yeah, we elevated the MAGA bomb-throwing lunatics in the hopes that more normie Democrats would be able to beat them. And it worked out for them. Largely, this was something that I found to be both philosophically unpalatable and also in terms of practicality worrisome in terms of what the results might be. That even if you only end up electing one of these lunatics to Congress and that you have success in 5 other races or something along those lines, that just having that one additional absolute lunatic in Congress is worse than having a couple of sort of centrist Republicans who are wishier and washier on Trump than you want them to be.
Right, but I suspect that that's not the lesson that they took away, those who participated in this from the 2022 midterms, right? Their impression is like the gambit worked, and in the future we need to goose up crazy types so that we have a better chance of retaking the House, right? I suspect
and it's a gambit
go
that Hillary Clinton was excited about in 2016. She wanted to face Donald Trump because she was certain that she could beat Donald Trump. And then it turns out that 50,000 votes across 3 states or whatever the number ends up being ends up costing her the election. Right. And like I agree with you. I don't think that Donald Trump is a nationally viable figure any longer. I cannot really see a path, as you used to say, for the 2020, no path to victory for Donald Trump. The problem is that it was still in the low tens of thousands of votes across a fairly minimal number of states.
Very thin, razor-thin margins.
Very razor thin. You don't know what's going to happen. You don't know how much of a hold over the election process the committed partisans in these various states have. If you go to Arizona, does it matter what the final outcome is? If we have now a Republican Party in charge of certifying results, that's just completely fucking insane. Right? I mean, and maybe that's a crazy thing to worry about, but maybe it's not, because the things that they've been saying out loud are that if we are elected into these offices, then there's no way that Donald Trump would lose again moving forward. Those are just the things that they say out loud.
Right.
So, I mean, I don't know. I assume that conventional wisdom will hold again, and that Donald Trump is functionally unelectable at the national level. Is it possible that what Alvin Bragg is doing here is doing some weird 4-dimensional chess or what have you, and helping along the cause of further elevating Donald Trump while marginalizing potential challengers, right? Because this has not been a good couple of weeks for challengers to Donald Trump. If anything, what the indictment and subsequent arrest and arraignment have done is forced all of his challengers basically to have his back. It forced Ron DeSantis to come out and say, I wouldn't even support an extradition of Donald Trump from Florida up to New York. It's like, what? First of all, what are you talking about?
That's
not a thing. It's not up to you. This has nothing to do with you. And also, do you think that Donald Trump would be like, oh, yes, thank you, Ron DeSanctimonious, for being so brave? It's like, no, of course not. He would sooner go turn himself in Manhattan than allow you to serve as his protector. It doesn't make any goddamn sense. But is it possible that this indictment, and along with perhaps the more serious ones that are likely to follow, is some version of what the DNC did in the 2022 midterms, an attempt to elevate Trump, to isolate him as the only contender on the Republican side, so that whoever the Democrat ends up being, because of course Joe Biden has not yet officially announced that he is running again, whether that's Kamala or some other successor, is it possible there's some plan happening here to make sure that Trump is the GOP nominee in 24?
You know, I was going around the conspiracy theory circles recently to see if anyone's kind of gathered that much. Like, this is a ruse to try to keep Trump in the news so that the GOP they have to reflexively defend him and support him, knowing that it will be to their future defeat, right? And so, like, I haven't seen that yet in the wild, but maybe, you can probably write something up and post it anonymously. But it has the same effect, right? I mean, like, anytime there is any, like, attempt to, charge Trump or do anything to him, it has a galvanizing effect on everybody. And to the point that you're making about, like, it's bad news for the challengers of Trump, like, he is the center of gravity. They must realize that, right? Like, everything kind of rotates around him, even DeSantis or everyone else. Like, I do wonder, like, I'm sure DeSantis is going to look at how things are around the fall, winter, and before the Iowa caucus next year, see where things stand. But if it looks like the same as today, like Trump's got like a 20, 30-point lead against the next place person, why not just sit this cycle out and run in 28?
There's no way that if you're DeSantis and you have experienced months of diminishment in the polls and you have not been able to distinguish yourself as somebody who stands outside of this current Trump news cycle and instead has fallen in line and in an obsequious sort of way, basically. I mean, at first, his first reaction to the whole Stormy Daniels thing was perhaps a semi-clever way of dealing with it, which is like, well, I don't really know how you're supposed to pay off porn stars properly. That's not the sort of thing I ever have to deal with, so I don't know much about that. But that transitions into a full-throated defense of this as political acts by the Democrats and the evil DNC and evil Soros-funded blah, blah, blah. Right. And now you're basically in Trump's camp, and there's not really any extricating yourself from that. And I don't know how you distinguish yourself from him moving forward after this. And why would you bother running for president if you have zero chance of beating him in a primary?
Right. And all of I don't even know, like, if the GOP, they're doing debates among themselves. I know they were talking about not doing the general election debates, but I don't know if they're not doing the primary debates. But, like, imagine 6-7 people in one of these debates, and the focus is all about, like, what do you think of Trump getting indicted? Like, that's an opportunity to attack. No one will take it, right? Other than, like, I guess Asa Hutchinson or whatever.
Chris Christie or Asa Hutchinson will probably say something that makes them stand out from the crowd. But does it? Of course, it doesn't fucking matter.
Right. But everybody else will just be hemming and hawing about how wrong what's happening to Trump. So like no one will, because all of the issues will be about that and not about something else, right? Like I don't even know. So like what is going to be your distinguishing feature, right? If they're all the reporters, every time you interact with people, they're going to talk about what do you think what they're doing to Trump, you know? And you can't say, well, the first indictment was bullshit, but the second one, looks pretty rough for, you know, like you can't say that.
And also, how do you stand up there and say, look, I don't bang porn stars while my wife is home with a child, so they're not going to come after me. Right. I don't call up secretaries of state in Pennsylvania and Georgia and Arizona and demand that they come up with votes, so they're not going to come after me. The problem is that people love that about Trump, right? Like they love that he's so like who is the audience that you're actually appealing to? And it becomes this thing where you're appealing to some. So if 40% of the Republicans are completely unmovable, and then you as committed Trump diehards, and then you throw in something like another 20 or 25% who happily line up behind him anytime he can present himself as the victim of a mainstream media or the rest of the deep state or the Democrats and the rhinos and all of that, then now you're talking about maybe a quarter of all Republicans who would vote in a primary who are still available to you. And now you're chopping that 25% up among the 7 or 8 people on the stage there. And you have to capture 100% of them to stay in the race moving forward. Like it's just not going to happen. What makes me insane about it is that the Republicans had every opportunity to be done with him after January 6th, 2021. Like that could have been the end if they had acted appropriately, and they chose not to. And that's what I always come back to when it comes to any of this stuff, is that it was possible to bury him after that, and ultimately they chose not to because they couldn't imagine a future where what had happened on January 6th was not the end of all political aspirations for anyone moving forward. They lacked the imagination to realize that Donald Trump was going to turn even that to his advantage, as he has done. And it's a fucking shame, because now what we're going to deal with is he's absolutely going, like I see no path to him not being the nominee for president for the Republicans in 24, barring his death, right? And
isn't that crazy though to say? Like basically both sides are pretty much locked in, and unless something unusual happens, it's going to be a redo of 2020, right? There's no serious person challenging Biden on the left. Williamson, I guess, but like that's it. And then Trump is going to play this card to.
You said serious person challenging Biden on the left. Yeah. So.
Yes, the only person challenging him so far. But yes, right. I mean, if things kind of stay as they are, I mean, right. And the thing on the Trump side, like he's more volatile. I mean, with Biden, it's all about like, if the wheels fall off, like health-wise, over the next 18 months, right? But other than that, he's fine. But Trump, like all of the crazy stuff is already kind of priced into the cost, right? Like what more information would come out that you would think differently about Trump? Like all of these stories about him doing things with porn stars and walking into like underage, like teen pageants, like that didn't do anything, right? The Access Hollywood thing.
And he's never really won an election, right? He wins in 2016 by virtue. He loses by the 4 million popular votes. He wins by virtue of the goofy electoral college.
Right.
In 2018, he loses a bunch of seats. In 2020, he can't even get the state of Georgia to come out and vote for senators after he loses the national election. Right. So he's lost. And then in 2022, again, despite Biden being a wildly unpopular president in terms of his approval rating.
And all the indicators, inflation, all of these bad things just out in the...
Trump continues to be an anchor around the neck of any Republican national hopeful, with the exception like J.D. Vance, right? Like J.D. Vance wins in Ohio, but like that's no great surprise ultimately. It's not like Trump was the ultimate decider there after the nominating process was over. So like the Republicans are stuck with him because they chose not to unshackle themselves from him after January 6th of 2021, and it means that we're stuck with him as the center of political life for at least the next year and a half or whatever it is until November of 24.
Right.
And I don't know. I don't know what else to say about it except
So
that
you're locked in that this case is going to fall apart. So you give it no chance of conviction? You think this is it's going to fall apart?
we have to. Apparently, they're not even going to move on this for like 8 months, right? Like
they're haggling over like either January of 24 or like at sometime in the spring of 24. That's like in the heart of. So that's why the story is going to remain an issue, and that's going to be what people are going to be talking about. Yeah, it might as well be like an in-kind contribution to the Trump 2024.
It is. That's what drives me crazy, is that what this is the crime that they're trying to convict him of. If Alvin Bragg doesn't cut a check to the Trump, and doesn't make the FEC aware of the campaign contribution that he's doing for Donald Trump, then Alvin Bragg himself should be brought up on the same charges that he's associating Donald Trump with.
Right. And not to overuse the juice isn't worth the squeeze. Like just on the whole, just from afar, the effort to bring a former president from Florida to New York and the barricades and it must have been an all hands on deck situation with the police. All of that effort for some cockamamie crime that's hard to prove. It just seems
we take fraudulent business documents very seriously here in Manhattan. Are you out of your goddamn mind? You've chosen not to prosecute a number of low-level felonies, like street crimes and violence and like actual crimes. Like there's just an open-air weed market in New York constantly, and it's completely illegal by the entire state. It's still completely illegal the way that they sell weed on the streets of New York now, and nobody fucking cares. They don't bother enforcing the law whatsoever. But you want to say that because he was cutting checks to Michael Cohen, who was then turning around and cutting checks to porn stars, that this is the thing that we need to get Donald Trump on. You're out of your goddamn mind. And you're just doing his work for him.
I'm glad that there are confident people out there, because I would not have the confidence to bring that case forward. Like he's not sweating bullets or anything. He's not concerned that he's going to look like a fool.
No, because they're going to make him the governor of New York in 2 years, right? Because
this guy's the heir apparent.
He's the guy who arrested Donald Trump. People love this shit. We had a lovely dinner at Lori's mother's house this past week for Passover.
She was dressed up like a Republican for Passover.
Lori thinks that because her mother was wearing a red T-shirt with. It's a red T-shirt.
It had an American flag on
with
it.
Under Armour insignia, and some of the Under Armour stuff sometimes has like sort of patriotic sort of.
The sleeve had a flag on it.
Yeah, there was a flag on it, and there's some stars around the Under Armour logo. Lori thinks
her blue glasses.
Yeah, part of it does it does read vaguely Republican, which is stupid.
Sorry.
The American flag
she
now.
She dressed up as a Republican for Passover. It's fine.
In the same way that saying the Democratic Party reads as liberal to people because of how dumb the world is, wearing an American flag on your shoulder lapel reads as Republican, sadly. Anyway, lovely dinner that we had.
Very tasty. Thanks, Mom.
Yep, delicious. And the usual Passover weirdness.
Not weird. It's not weird.
No, it's definitely not.
It's not weird.
Definitely not weird to.
It's not weird, whatever it is.
Paint lamb's blood over.
It's beautiful.
We also watched the Ten Commandments. I guess we'll talk about that at the end of the.
We watched some of it.
At the end of the night here. Anyway, for normie Democrats, which Lori's mother, if she's anything, she's a bit of a normie Democrat.
Yeah.
In a sort of boomerish, normie sort of way. She thinks
that's not mean, Mom. He's not being mean.
Not being mean. It's just what you are. She thinks this is great. She thinks this is fucking Donald Trump finally getting what's coming to him.
Her husband does not agree. He doesn't.
Sure,
he thinks it's just
but
nothing.
I think that a lot of moderately well-informed, politically aware individuals who have a long-standing distrust and disdain for the former president are perfectly happy with all of this and believe that he's finally getting what's coming to him. And you need look no further than my mother-in-law or half of Twitter suggesting that actually what's going on here is great and good. And finally somebody's holding Donald Trump to account. And I can't get past the fact that this is not that. This is just helping him. And even if it was a more convincing charge, even if there was something more here than it seems like there is, still the wall-to-wall attention that he's getting out of this only serves to benefit him, right? Allowing him to be the focus of the entire fucking culture only serves to benefit him, and I don't see any way around that. The only way, if once the Republicans decided they weren't going to cut ties with him a couple of years ago when they had the opportunity, the only other option is just to ignore him. Which was allegedly the lesson that we were supposed to learn from all of the free media that they presented him with in 2015 and 2016. But they have not learned that lesson. And it's just a lengthy and boring parade of cars from helicopter shots and the front doors of buildings and nothing happening. And then Trump walks out and Tapper's like, I think that's the president. Yep. I recognize the president when I see him, as like his profile walks across the screen for a second and a half and he gets into a black SUV. Like, what are we doing here? We've done this before. Why are we doing it again? What are we accomplishing?
The system worked. So took 45 presidencies before this happened. Under 3.5 presidencies before somebody else gets indicted. You think it's going to happen relatively soon over some random thing?
Right. So it becomes a question of who's in charge, right? And is there any question whatsoever if Donald Trump is the next president that Hunter Biden is being? I mean, it sounds silly, but like this is the sort of thing that you have to worry about now. Which is if something so minor as we're talking about campaign finance law, for fuck's sake. It doesn't matter, right? They're fake made up laws about how we fund elections. like seriously, it doesn't fucking matter.
Yeah.
Like it's what are we doing?
Yeah.
And if that's the sort of thing that, like, if you held previous president, Bush was a fucking war criminal, according to half this country.
That's actually hard to prove, apparently. You can't prove it.
The Clintons weren't fucking criminals? Are you out of your goddamn mind? You don't think that they were criminals along this same line in terms of hiding various...
I think the Whitewater thing, they were trying to get him on that. Some weird, like, kickback scheme. But yeah, I think the only... Do you think that this plays a role? That Trump, even though, like, he's big on the right, like, he's, like, come on, New York guy. Like, he's like from a very blue place. His whole life is blue. He interacts with a bunch of blue people with Hollywood and all that stuff. But like, for some reason, his little scheme works better with the right. But like, he did something in a blue city, even though he's supposed to be like a red guy. Like most other people, like if you're a Democrat, you're likely going to be hanging around very friendly places, right? So maybe no charge. There won't be a political angle to bring about charges. Like unless they catch you like in Wyoming.
Who do you think Donald Trump's next attorney general is going to be? Is it going to be someone with the relative principled backbone of Bill Barr, as shaky as that really was, ultimately, right? Like, he won't be sending us his best, right? Like, we got his best from 2017 to 2021. That was the absolute cream of the crop in terms of people who are going to ever work for Donald Trump again.
Right.
The future people in a future Trump administration are not going to be so circumspect in terms of their own morals, in terms of their own principles. They're just going to be Trump yes people.
Right. But it's implausible that he becomes president again.
It is implausible that he can be the president again. But is it implausible that Ron DeSantis could be the president in 2028? And the way that we talk about DeSantis in terms of him being... And that's the other thing, is like, well, whatever. We don't have to get into the way that the media covers DeSantis, because that's not the story of the news this week. But
the story of the news.
Yeah.
Well, this was fun.
So we seem to be in agreement. What is the counter argument? What is the virtue in doing this? Is it just, well, nobody's above the law? But like, I can't even take that in, because clearly presidents are above the law in very many important ways, right? We've come to accept that. Would it be preferable if they were not, if the law truly treated everyone equally? But that's the thing. If everyone was treated equally under the law, then he would be the 15th straight president indicted for various crimes. These are people who commit crimes of the sort that we're talking about here. Right. So like, I don't know what we're talking about. Everybody commits, there's that old thing about 3 felonies a day. Like, if you want to get somebody, you can get somebody on anything, basically. And it is the choice of going after him that, to me, is just not a good idea. And I'm happy to be convinced otherwise, but it doesn't sound like you want to do that convincing either.
No, because in agreement, although I do think, like I said, the saving grace will be a second indictment, and then this story, nobody cares about the particulars. But if it's just this story, it's going to look bad because, what I like, maybe it's just me, I like my crimes to be, like, easy to explain, like murder or, like, rape or, like, kidnapping, like, very to the point, like, what are you in charge for? And, like, if you had to sum up in one word, you probably couldn't, whatever this is, right? It's just like using election funds to pay a porn star through your lawyer for hush money. So, like, those kind of things, when you have to use a lot of words to explain what happened, I think, leave those things alone. Leave him alone.
Right.
Get the bigger things. But again, this would be a moot point if they get a second indictment. He needs one of these other people to bring about charges.
Yeah, so there's possibility of charges coming out of D.C., I believe, where there's a lot of movement this week on various Trump people going and having to testify there. There's, of course, the Georgia case. That grand jury was impaneled and is no longer impaneled, right? This is now just entirely in the DA's office down there.
Right.
Not clear what the movement on that is going to be in terms of that's a straightforward election interference thing where he is trying to get Raffensperger and Brian Kemp to find 11,000 votes.
Right.
And yeah, I guess
there is some wiggle room with what do they mean by fine. Like he can come up with some concocted explanation.
Right, and that's the thing. Like now we have Mark Meadows with the opportunity to come forward and say, yeah, he was like basically telling me to steal the election for him.
Right.
Like that's all we have to do. If we could just get Mark Meadows to come out and say the obvious true thing, then we would be pretty well set here. But of course, Mark Meadows isn't going to do that. What else do we want to talk about tonight besides the Trump stuff?
Movies.
We can get to that shortly. We can talk about baseball very briefly.
Baseball.
The Braves got the season started. They're winning a bunch of games already. As far as I know, they're already winning again tonight. I've seen one of these calls, this goofy new rule about how if you're not, like, because they have the pitch clock, right? And if there's anybody on base, then the pitcher has 20 seconds to deliver the pitch. We've gone over this in the past. If the bases are empty, then he has 15 seconds to deliver the pitch. But as part of this rule, it's not just on the pitcher to be ready to deliver the pitch. The batter also has to be ready to receive the pitch. And the batter signals that he's ready to receive the pitch by being in the batter's box with his eyes towards the pitcher with at least 8 seconds left on the pitch clock. And if the batter is not in the batter's box with his eyes towards the pitcher at 8 seconds, then a automatic strike is called on that individual. And I find that to be the single most absurd rule in sports this side of the fumble out of the back of the end zone that results in a touchback for the other team going the other way. Yeah. Like there are bad rules in sports. That's one of them.
Too steep a cost, yeah.
Right. It's absolutely too steep a cost. This makes zero sense that they're assessing. It's just an absurdity. It has nothing to do with the game of baseball, and they could just do away with it and keep the pitch clock, and all would be fine.
Right, because I think we did talk about this because one suggestion was to just, once it gets past that 8 seconds, like, it is incumbent on you to do something about it, right? So the pitcher can throw it as you're, like, doing whatever the fuck you're doing outside of the box. Like, that's on you. Like, if you want to assume that risk by not being ready, the pitcher is willing and able to throw the strike without your ability to react to it, right? And so, like, you don't even need to do the automatic whatever. Just let the game develop.
Right. And though I don't care for that particular aspect of the rule, this goofy 8 seconds auto strike thing, and I think if I had to guess, that's going to go away. Like, that's just, they got to find some other way to do it. I do like the rule in general. I have no problem with it. I sort of anticipated when I first heard about it, I thought, I'm not going to like this. This is bullshit. This is not baseball. I've decided that it's fine. It is still baseball, and it's all good. I wrote about it at the blog last week. I didn't blog much this week. I'm going to take a mulligan. I'm not going to say that this breaks my streak. That's all bullshit. I got spring break happening now. We've been to the
He has a thing to do is the problem. He has baseball, so he has a thing to do.
Baseball practicing 2 to 3 hours a day, like basically every day for the last week. It's a lot of baseball.
2 to 3 hours a day, all of those
Look,
after 5 p.m.
I had to drive out to Stanton and build a goddamn... I had to paint a chicken coop yesterday.
I'm just
I gotta drive out
letting
to
the
Stanton on
listeners
Thursday
know what your schedule is like.
and build a chicken coop. We got a lot of chicken coop and baseball related stuff going on, along with some personal news that we're not going to discuss on the show. It's taken over life and it's made blogging difficult. So I took the week off basically, but we'll get back to it soon enough. But I did blog about baseball because I read a piece, Jason Stark's season preview, talking about all of the new rules and a lot of other things to look for this season. And I'll make sure there's a link in the show notes to that, of course. But Max Scherzer was talking about the clock. And Scherzer sort of suggested that because the clock is working, we don't actually need the clock. Right? This is sort of his line of thinking is like, and Scherzer's a guy, he enjoys sort of the gamesmanship of the whole thing. So like he likes that there's a clock now and he can fuck with the batter's heads in terms of when he's going to deliver it. And he'll vary at what point during the pitch clock he delivers the pitch. And he's got different colored eyes. He can keep people off balance. He's a fucking weirdo. It's fine. It's good. But he's also said this thing, which I found sort of amusing. He said, the clock should only be on if players intentionally play too slow. You need a play clock in football because the sport's timed. We don't have a game with that design. This clock is not about time. This is just about pace. And for the most part, we've all adjusted our routines to match the pace. So why bring the ball strike implication into it if we're all playing at pace?
So this is like when we're playing a game that has an optional timer and you're taking too fucking long. So I pull out the timer and I start the timer because you're taking too long. Everybody else is doing just fine. It's
right.
like that. He's suggesting that.
Right. It's sort of like...
It's like he knows you.
Yeah. What he's saying, or what he seems to be missing in my analysis of the situation, is he's discovered the problem of just living in a society and having any rules at all. Like, yeah, we all generally agree that things ought to be a certain way. And it would be better if we all just adhered to those social norms. But looking around, a lot of people have decided not to adhere to social norms, and therefore we end up with laws. And if there was no criminality in the human condition, no antisocial behavior, nobody who decided that they were going to take advantage of the fact that there are no consequences to any of their actions, aside from some raised eyebrows and the sort of stink of shame of being cast out occasionally from time to time, then maybe we wouldn't need laws. But sadly, in fact, we do.
Right.
And as I said, in Scherzer's ideal, the vast majority of players understand that the league wants to emphasize an increased pace of play and do as told. Social pressure and the threat of the umpire turning the clock on would be enough to keep things moving at the league's preferred pace. But the problem with a rule that is only enforced according to the subjective judgment of a designated official is obvious. It leaves clear room for bias, unconscious or otherwise, to play a determinative role in outcomes. One might argue that so does the strike zone or any other judgment call, but umpires are carefully analyzed for the ability to call a consistent zone, and they're getting better every year, thanks to the increased scrutiny of that technology brings. But stick something as subjective as how much time to grant a person to prepare themselves to see the next pitch or deliver it in the hands of fallible, irritable men, that's begging for trouble. And I can see the headlines already. Can hear the voices on NPR in my head. Study shows umpires disproportionately call subjective time violations on minority, especially dark-skinned players. Statistic reveals that black and brown pitchers twice as likely to get penalized for failing to pitch promptly. Group calls on MLB to hire anti-racist consultants and promote more BIPOC umpires. Jackie Robinson may have broken the color barrier in 1947, but structural racism and implicit bias persist in umpires' subjective understanding of relative time.
Yeah, well, robots then.
Also, I get the venting, like, hey, why did it have to be this way? Like, he's kind of almost resentful of the fact that this is needed. But, like, it serves no purpose to, like, use it and then take it away for like good behavior and then bring it back like, hey, now you guys are, backsliding.
No, you clearly haven't played enough games with Bob, Abe.
It's just what
this
Bob
is yes, most people.
Look, sometimes
it's like, you have a few minutes to figure out what your next move is.
Sometimes
and
there's
then you get to Bob and it's like, Oh, are we still playing? I thought that we quit because it's been 40 minutes and it's been the same situation.
Sometimes there's a bingo on your Scrabble tile board, and it just takes a minute for it to properly reveal itself.
If it took a minute, that'd be fine. It can take, I'm not kidding, 40 minutes.
And as I usually do with baseball, I wrapped up this blog, which I will continue to read now, by blowing it up into the full society-defining thing that it actually is, which is, Max, I wish we lived in a world where we didn't need a pitch clock. I hope we never see a regular season game decided on a walk-off clock violation, but it's going to happen. I would prefer it if everyone simply followed the preferred order and promptly played ball at all times. Would that it were so simple, but we have proven that we are incapable of holding each other to account in this way, and in many others. And now we must submit to the tyranny of the ticking clock. We have failed to bear the burden, each of us individually, incognizant of our responsibility and duty to each other and the greater system. And now we suffer under the gaze and consequence of an objective, inhuman authority. Baseball is life. I'll let that speak for itself. I don't have to draw any more lines there. Is there an argument in my baseball post against what I'm saying with regards to Trump, which is that there are rules, we have built this system, and everyone needs to follow the system, and ultimately we have appointed authorities in charge to enforce those rules and to make sure that the rules are followed? Why then am I so insistent that Donald Trump be allowed to skate on this thing that he did that was probably, by the letter of the law, illegal?
Right, because again, it's the whole the juice isn't worth the squeeze kind of thing. Basically, based on all the information, like it doesn't rise to the level of a charge that you would bring. It's not serious enough to bring charges. And this is a breaking of norms. This has never happened before, right? So, like for a case, like for a moment that big, like historically, the case should meet that moment, right? Like it should be something worthy of it. Almost kind of like why people had all these conspiracy theories about JFK. It's because like it can't be that. Like just some schmuck shot him from some depository and that was it. There's no like bigger thing. It can't be that. So it's like all these other reasons, right? But that was it. That was the story. That's how it ended. And so like this story is just like, wait, that's it? Like there's got to be more to it. And that's why I think the leaking of that it was going to be about 20, 30 count, whatever, and it was going to be on Tuesday. The releasing of that information, people thought that can't be it because it didn't match the moment, and so they assumed there's some additional information, and that's why this Alvin Bragg is doing this. And then when they revealed that, nope, it was just the basic stuff everybody knew, it was like...
he's been falsifying business documents, right, and we take that very seriously here in Manhattan.
Right. So it's one of those things where it's just like it doesn't match. It's the charge and the situation don't match.
Abe, are you familiar with AirTags?
Yeah. These little things that Apple sells that you can.
Right. So Apple sells this little fucking futuristic tracking device, which you can, in the good version of the world, you take your Apple AirTag and you stick it on your iPhone, or maybe you stick it to your MacBook, and then you can find it wherever that device is. You just go on to some other Apple device and you say, find my AirTag, and then it tells you where your MacBook is. So that the fucking dirtbag, or maybe just the barista who accidentally swiped up a MacBook that looked like their MacBook but was actually not their MacBook, you can then contact that person and make the trade, right?
Yeah.
You just exchange because you
that's
made a mistake.
Pitch. Yeah, that's the pitch for this product. I watch a lot of local news now that I work mostly from home. It's great. And they do a lot of these stories where like a person was flying and they put an AirTag in their luggage and their luggage went missing. And what do you know? The luggage is last location at one of the employees at that airport, like in baggage. So like somebody from baggage takes their stuff home and they're arrested at their home. Like there are all these.
Could I also like put it on my husband's phone to keep track of him?
I suppose you could do that. Yes. I mean, there's also these scary like local stories where they're
more likely it's the husband who's sticking it on the wife's. I mean, not to get into stereotypes
the wives
here.
Communicate their whereabouts. The husbands are the ones that don't say what they're doing.
You're not understanding the level of suspicion that is going on here. Not just to like, oh, did Bob stop at Wegmans on the way home from baseball practice and just not tell me, but instead is Bob banging...
No, the wives don't do that. The wives are smarter.
Right. What I'm saying is that people use it in very stalkerish ways that are not good.
Yeah, but the wives are smarter. They know what they're doing.
And on at least 2 occasions, local news here in Atlanta did a story for the negative reasons of using this. Like, one story that I remember was that at a gas station, unsuspecting people, they had somebody put their AirTags like somewhere in their vehicle, and they followed them home for like a robbery or some other nefarious reason. And so they're like, oh, consumers alert, like this could happen to you. And Apple had to respond by saying, oh, that's likely not to happen. You know, it'll be fine.
Right. Or you slip the AirTag. You're meeting a girl for drinks and things aren't going well, but you slip the AirTag into her bag or something along those lines.
Yeah, there are a lot of
fucking. Like, I mean, there are any number of ways to be a total fucking creep in the world.
How big is it? What's it look like?
It's like a little quarter-sized thing. Like it's nothing.
Yeah, it's probably between a quarter and a nickel.
I want to give one to everyone I know because I would love to know where everyone is all the time.
Yeah, that's not okay. It's not a good way to be in the world, is to know where everyone is all of the time.
It would be so nice.
I bring it up because this is a quote from mysanantonio.com. A San Antonio man is not expected to face charges after his car was stolen, and a confrontation with the suspected thief ended in fatal gunfire on Wednesday, March 29th, police said. The man's vehicle was stolen from his Northside home on Wednesday afternoon, police said, but by using an Apple AirTag, he was able to track his truck down to a shopping center on the southeast side in the 3200 block of Southeast Military Drive. SAPD spokesperson Nick Solis said the man called police to report his vehicle as stolen, but did not wait for police to arrive before attempting to confront the suspected car thief around 4 p.m. Police said the man saw his truck in the parking lot, walked up to the stolen vehicle in an attempt to confront the person inside, and some sort of disagreement ensued. Solis said he could not confirm if the man and the suspected thief argued, but said the car theft victim told police he believed the suspected thief pulled out a gun, which prompted a firefight. Police said that at this time they believe the car thief victim is the only person to have fired shots and could not confirm if there was more than one weapon found at the crime scene. The suspected thief, another man, was shot and pronounced dead. His identity has not been released. The car theft victim reportedly stayed at the scene of the shooting, complied with police, and was taken into custody for questioning. The shooter is not expected to face charges, but noted an investigation is ongoing. So that's what you can do with your Apple AirTag, is that if your truck gets stolen, you can track it down and shoot the guy who stole your truck in the head and then not get charged with it.
Now, I suspect the person who was in possession of the vehicle at the time of this interaction, they presented a weapon, or they...
Not clear. That's what the shooter insisted, that he saw a weapon.
Okay. So he saw a weapon, or imagined one, and he shot back, or just shot, and he's okay. He's in the clear. You would think that the common advice is to sick the cops on the thief. Like, hey, officer, I got this little gimmick. Apple comes up with a little tracking thing, and it's with my car.
The police are agents of the state. Why would you trust them?
Right, but like he could have like gotten killed. I mean, the other guy could have been, like quicker on the draw, and got him.
Texas's laws state that a person can use deadly force against another person in cases of, quote, unlawful interference, end quote, with their property. So, you mess with my shit,
right,
I am allowed to use deadly force against you, and no, I don't have to wait for the police. Now, it would be curious if it turns out that the gentleman who he confronted in his car was not the thief.
Right,
that he only
that's the problem, right?
Assumed that it was the thief rather than the car having been like passed along in some way to an unsuspecting third party. And then you would hope that maybe there would be some charges brought here, but
right.
It doesn't appear that charges are even possible in this case in the state of Texas.
Yeah, because like how can you prove that? I mean, it's kind of like one of the arguments I heard where they say like you can't set your home like as a booby trap, like for like criminals, because like you can hurt somebody who's not a criminal in theory. Like you can't make your home like like a spear will come out of somewhere, like if you get past the first door?
I can't make my house like the house in Home Alone.
Apparently not. Maybe it's because of Home Alone that they changed the law, but like apparently you can't do that. And the thinking is that, like, what if,
I don't know that we can say this is a free country if I can't Home Alone my house.
Well, you're trying to deter this behavior, Sometimes you got to do that thing. But, like, I am surprised that they didn't even look into it. So this is a recent thing, so it's a settled matter. That they're not, like, investigating. They're like, we're going to leave this be.
No, it's just state police in Texas. Local authorities have domain here, and there will not be any charges brought. Seems bad. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's a light hour bogus future.
But,
sort of.
it's, the technology facilitated something. Like, if you just saw in passing, just happenstance, your stolen vehicle, the same situation could have happened, right? It's like,
Also, if this person who stole had known that it was being tracked, he probably wouldn't have stolen it.
Yeah. So
surveillance is always good. You will never get me to change my mind about that.
Yeah, so far so good, right? I mean, these horror stories haven't come to fruition.
If he had known,
surveillance.
he wouldn't have taken it.
I disagree. I think people have a general expectation that when you steal a car, you're gonna get caught.
I don't think that.
I think even car thieves.
What's that thing where if people think they're being watched, they behave better?
Oh yeah, some sort of theory, right?
That's some sort of like very true
there's
thing.
There's like a bunch of studies there that suggest that even fake cameras will lead to people behaving better.
Yeah.
It's just not clear to me that that's any sort of society that you actually want to live in.
It's the exact one I want to live in.
You and everyone else
precise...
are constantly the center of the panopticon. It seems unpleasant for all involved. Let's do a quick Strassmann here.
Okay, real quick. I want to talk about other stuff.
Last night's NCAA Men's Basketball Championship featured some special guests with the right stuff. They are the 4 astronauts who were just named to fly on the first mission around the moon in more than half a century. The crew of Artemis II includes the first woman, the first black astronaut assigned to a lunar mission. Our Mark Strassmann spoke to the astronauts and joins us now from Houston. Mark, good morning.
Hey, Nate, good morning to you. Starting this June, this mock-up capsule behind me is going to be part of this new crew's training for the next 18 months. And when they fly, they're going to join a very select group. Only 24 people have ever seen such a close-up view of the moon.
Ladies and gentlemen, your Artemis II crew.
NASA has its own Final Four. This astronaut crew leading a new lunar mission. Their selection, realizing a lifelong dream, puts them over the moon.
We've spent our entire lives looking up at the moon. And now
Gonna stop it right there. That is Mark Strassmann, CBS News' senior national news correspondent. Abe, did he get off a good one?
How can you cut it off right there? This is a very engaging story. I was watching.
No, it's the end.
That's it? That's all you get?
No, he did not get it.
Ooh, sorry, Mark. Try again next time. No, he did not. Fucking
I have to
worthless
tell you
Strassmann.
that
Pathetic.
my friend Julia went to Ottawa in the springtime of last year and also does work with space. So I am crediting her with this mission.
Oh, nice.
Because a Canadian is on the mission?
Exactly, precisely.
The math checks out.
So I have one friend who made Narcan available and another who got a joint American-Canadian mission to the moon greenlit. And my friends are very influential.
Very powerful people.
So this next thing is just to fly around the moon, and then there's going to be yet another one where they...
A moon drive-by, yes. They're going to do a moon drive-by. I don't know if they'll be shooting any projectiles at the moon as they go by or dropping anything off, but that's what they'll be doing.
I want to make this clear. I 100% believe the story with the moon landing, right? 100%. In agreement, the thing happened. But, man, this is ridiculous. Like, it's been 50 years... And it's still a Herculean effort to get to the moon. Shouldn't it be that much easier?
It's very far.
But nothing is on par technologically compared to like 1969. How were we able to do it then? Like it doesn't. I mean, again, 100% in agreement.
Everything's the
but
same.
boy,
We just have iPhones now.
I think it's a risk-reward calculation, ultimately. I think that's the only explanation, right? Which is that there was tremendous risk to actual human life every time that we sent astronauts to the moon back when we did it in the 60s and early 70s, right?
Right.
And that risk now maintains. Like, even though technology has gotten much better and presumably we would be
have Wi-Fi now.
better at this than we were back then, the risk to human life is still quite high. And the reward, given that there is no such thing as a space race really anymore, like I guess the Chinese are trying to do some stuff, and presumably I guess we should be worried about that. But
I have a friend who would have a lot she can't tell us about that.
Sure, but like the downside is dead astronauts, and the upside is being on the moon, which
still live astronauts.
doesn't appear to be that big of a deal ultimately, like in terms of setting the stage for future and further human space exploration. Obviously very important, and I'm very excited about it. But in terms of accomplishing anything of true value, it doesn't seem to be terribly important.
Right.
So
yeah. No,
I think it's just a risk-reward
in
calculation.
agreement.
Does representation matter, Abe? And we've come to accept...
It so does. I don't want to hear you talk about this. It makes me so mad.
We've come to accept that representation matters. And I think that in this case, we have a nice lady. We have a nice black fella.
We don't know that any of these people are nice.
I mean, they're certainly presented in that way, and I will give them the benefit of the doubt. They certainly have risen to the very tip top of their profession.
I hope they're smart.
Presumably
smart and physically fit.
Yeah, by virtue of their various sets of skills and also ability to play NASA politics. I'm sure that played some role along the way. And also a very nice seeming Canadian as well. Does representation matter here? And I will even grant you, of course it does, Bob. What are you talking about? We're sending motherfuckers to space. They are representatives of the human species going out into our neighborhood here around the moon and further out into space than we've ever sent humans before. It seems like this mission is likely to go. Of course it matters that there's a black guy and a lady and a Canadian on there in terms of making people back on Earth feel like they can accomplish anything as well. So fine. I'll answer my own question. Don't be an asshole. Of course representation matters here in this case, right? In this one...
Right. This is the exception. You're going to carve out an exception.
Sending humans off of the planet to do spectacular exploration, the likes of which has never been done before. Yes, I think representation matters. In almost every other case, it doesn't matter at all.
What about
that's my hot
this
take here.
thinking, which is what the way I see it? It's like I always ask myself, like, does it have to matter to me for it to matter, right? Like, so somebody is getting something out of these things, right? And good for them. Like, because if I was younger, I wouldn't be like, wow, like this astronaut is black. Like, but somebody out there, maybe, I don't know, like, or woman or whatever, Canadian.
It's just, all it does is it speaks to the failure of us to treat people as they ought to be treated.
But that's a failure we have.
But is it? So it's not clear to me that it actually is necessarily, right?
Okay,
because
well then how about for hundreds of years we have black women do everything all the time? Only ever black women.
Because that would be very bad for humanity. Like
what?
It would be spectacularly bad for humanity to have only 6% of the population, because that's not how populations work.
Okay, but that's
You're not
how
going to get the best
it's been
people.
White men this whole time.
It's not true. Like, I agree that there's been a lot of power disproportionately in the hands of white men, but that's because of the accumulation of resources, right? Like, they have been disproportionately better educated than most other people. They have been disproportionately brought into the professional class.
By force.
They've been disproportionately made more capable of doing the things that they're supposed to do,
so for the next couple hundred years, have the most capable black women do everything. and make all the decisions.
Right, but this is like Joe Biden saying, "I'm going to It's like people getting mad when Joe Biden says the next Supreme Court justice is going to be a black woman, and somebody says, "Well, then, like almost certainly, it will not be the single most qualified individual who will be elevated to that position moving forward." Right? By definition, it is unlikely, just by the numbers, that once you have eliminated 94% of the applicant pool, that you're going to get the single most qualified person. That's fine. It's a series of trade-offs where you're saying it is in fact more important that representation matters in this case than it is necessary. That because there's sort of a ceiling on qualification in this particular thing, that it is sort of arbitrary to decide who is or is not slightly higher than the next person, something along those lines. Right. I'm sympathetic to that argument. But also, it must be said, if you eliminate 94% of the applicant pool, you're not going to get the best person off the bat.
The reason that it would be insane to just say, okay, the only people who get to do stuff for the next 100 years are black women is because that's stupid. That's not right. That's not how it should be. That would be weird.
Right.
It should be a balance. There should be different kinds of different colors of people and genders.
Absolutely, I agree.
So it matters. The end.
I disagree, because representation, whenever I hear representation matters, it's usually when I'm hearing an interview with somebody on NPR who's saying that seeing X individual do X thing in 1985 proved that it was possible for me to do the thing. But they're making a political statement about the fact that they are where they are, and to deny them their place in the society now would be to be denying some other future person the ability to see.
Okay, but just because someone's stupid on NPR doesn't mean that something doesn't matter.
Right, but that's what I'm saying, is that the thing that we've been assured, this truism, representation matters, I think is a symptom of a diseased and broken society that is obsessed with identity in a way that only reinforces the problems that it's claiming to fix.
Fine.
And in fact, if you just have equal access to, you just allow writers' room, you always hear about this in terms of like writers' rooms, that we need to have writers' rooms that represent America or something like that. We need to have publishing houses that publish a diverse series of authors because representation matters. And this is something that I've wrestled with in terms of a theory of aesthetics almost for a very long time.
Oh, this is a whole different episode. Can you wait?
No, I want to get it out now. And I think that I've tried to do this before.
You've said it a million fucking times. It's so boring.
I disagree. I think it's semi-interesting. And I know it's very easy to dismiss this as a white guy thing, right? Like, oh, of course, Bob can say this.
It's so easy to do that.
Bob's a white guy. But now you're both laughing at me. It's fine. It's just that there's this idea that a little black kid needs to see a black author get published in order to believe that he could be a writer moving forward is I don't think is actually in keeping with reality, right? Because if that were the case, then we would not have, like, if white supremacy has been this dominant force for as long as it's been, right? Then at no point could we have allowed these people to become representative of anything for other people moving forward?
So it's like having a pitch clock only when someone's taking too long.
I don't see the connection.
Like, it's fine because they got where they are. So it was fine before. Because most people were fine.
All I'm saying is that I don't think that it is important that little Guatemalan kid sees that Guatemalan people can succeed in certain ways if what you have is an open society that encourages achievement and allows for achievement at all levels by all people. And that's sort of all I'm saying here.
Do we have that?
Right. Aren't you kind of making that argument of that crazy picture from earlier where it's like, yeah, it'd be nice if that's how things were, but we're not there, and here we are, right? Isn't that kind of a similar thing where, like, it would be nice if somebody didn't need to draw that connection, like the shallow connection, like, oh, you look like me, and you're doing this thing that's great, and now I'm going to model myself after you. Like, you shouldn't have to think of the world in that way, but there's people who do.
I think that giving people the permission structure to believe that representation matters only reinforces negative stereotypes because it allows you to believe that when you do not see yourself represented, that your interests are therefore being somehow squashed.
But
like that's what I'm saying. This insistence that there is a truism that representation matters allows for it gives everyone permission to then be victimized when they do not see the representation happening. It creates a series of conditions that allows a person to believe that the reason that they didn't get their book picked up by the publishing house is because it's a bunch of white women working there rather than there being a black person there who would have picked up their work because representation matters.
Well, let me ask you a question. Maybe this will make a difference on your end, but maybe it is you're making a slightly different argument. Are you saying that representation doesn't matter or representation shouldn't matter? Right? Because if you're saying it should matter, then that's fine. But like, how can you say that it doesn't matter if you're hearing people who are now of college age, and they're talking to things I didn't know somebody could be president in black, or I didn't know this woman thing could do a woman thing, or whatever. Like, I don't know. But like, there are actual people who are saying these things, right? That say that this did matter, right? So like, I can't dispute
I'm saying that I don't think that most people walk around thinking about the fact, and I don't know,
right.
I suppose, and I can be accused of simply not knowing. I don't think most people walk around thinking of all the ways that society tells them that they can't do things. I think the people who think that turn out to be fucking psychotics like Michael Jordan.
Right.
And he's like, oh, you told me I couldn't do a thing?
Yeah.
Now I'm going to fucking murder your whole family in order to prove that I could do the thing, right? Like, those are... Right,
but there's been... documentaries and like snippets of news stories, and this is not just one; it's just over the years where like people in like crappy like high schools like in the city or whatever, their impressions of like what they can be is kind of limited in scope. It's just like, well, no one.
This is all. What I'm saying is that's all narrative backfilling.
But they're experiencing their narrative, right? You're in that environment, right? So you're consuming this impression of what you can do, and so if that's limited, if that limitation is somehow broken by these cockamamie schemes, then hey, what are you gonna do? This is a positive development, right?
All I'm saying is that this notion of representation mattering is fucking bogus, right. and it creates the conditions by which it justifies itself. Like
did they lean into that, or is this one of those things like it's proof positive that they selected some sort of minority candidates? Oh, the only way they got in is because of some sort of scam that they were running. Like, I mean, did they come out and say like we picked some Canadian for the Canadians and some black person for the blacks and some woman for the women? Like, did they come out as
Canadians also aren't like a minority class?
What's
That's
that?
Not,
Right, that was sort of my joke, talking about the Canadian. But yeah, I don't. They've leaned into this. Like, try to imagine NASA putting together a crew of just 4 white males,
right,
to go do the moon mission. Right?
You can imagine it easily. That's how it's always been. Like.
Except that time it exploded.
Can you imagine it in 2022 or 2023,
not
whatever goddamn year it is?
Because I mean, now they have
it's
more
completely
qualified,
inconceivable.
They have qualified people and just pick from the pool of
right. And I'm not
people.
saying that these people don't deserve to be in the position that they're in. I'm just saying that the idea. And again, this one thing aside, because to me, like, yeah, some black kid in the hood who sees the black astronaut probably like, holy shit! Yeah. Like, wait, you telling me you can go to the fucking moon? Yeah. I legitimately did not realize that. Like to me, okay, in this case, maybe representation matters. Right. But as a general societal truism, in the same way that we insist that diversity makes things better, but when we say what we really mean by diversity is that. The correct arrangement of different skin tones is pleasing to our collective understanding of what America is, rather than any true diversity in terms of maybe what a person thinks or who a person is on the inside, and rather it's all just this sort of surface level diversity stuff,
right?
Like that these sorts of things that we just accept as absolute truths in our culture, I think should be pushed back on from time to time.
Counterpoint, baseball, here the black population, American black, not foreign black, is pretty low, and so maybe like all of the popular black athletes that people want to see themselves as are football players and basketball players, and that's why they're not playing baseball. Maybe maybe they're right about this.
But there were twice as many black players a generation ago in Major League Baseball,
because
right?
Before then, there was like this effort to come in.
Did representation matter or not?
It did, because those were the residues of past efforts. And then it got worse and worse, and look at where we are. It's a kind of a self-fulfilling thing. You need to infuse more American black baseball players.
Is that it's an entirely self-fulfilling thing.
Right,
that was my argument.
You have to deal with the moment, right? I mean, you have to react. You can't pretend you're not.
Mookie Betts rules at baseball. He's a black fella. Does representation matter? I don't know. What do you mean?
Don't say black fella.
He's a... That's not acceptable.
Not
Jesus
the way
Christ.
Not when you say it.
You've been listening. He's a black male fella. Is that even worse? You've been listening to Cast Iron Brains, a podcast with Bob and Abe. Find the show on Facebook or Twitter. Head over to brainiron.com, castironbrains.com, where I will not be blogging about Donald goddamn Trump. Find something else.
Ooh, good luck.
To yell about. The opening and closing themes of the show were composed by Mark Gillig. TETRAMER music.com, tetramermusic.com. Abe, did you make it to the movies this week?
I did. I went to go see this stupid Dungeons and Dragons movie, the card thing, and it was fine. Although I will say there were some nerd type people that were at the screening that I was watching, and they were applauding at the beginning and the end of the movie. You don't see that often. They were really happy with that movie.
It was a good day for them.
Do you know why?
They don't have much.
Because representation matters.
Yeah.
Actually, that was like from like central casting, like all the characters. Like, okay, we got the British guy, then we got like a black whatever guy. We get a woman here. We get the nerd. Like it was kind of perfectly.
I didn't even realize this existed until like a month ago when I first saw the first trailers for it. I don't remember what I was watching, but trailers were on TV. At first, I thought it was not real, and then I realized, they're actually making one of these movies. Was it? Because from the trailer that I saw, it treats it with a little bit of derision, like the whole thing.
Yeah,
like it actually, the whole thing is sort of a joke.
Right. It actually kind of worked. Like I thought this was gonna be like those movies that they were gonna release and dump, like it was gonna lose a bunch of money. But then like it was well reviewed. People were like, this is actually kind of fun. For like they don't take themselves seriously. It's kind of like, and then the movie goes by pretty fast.
Right.
And so I was surprised by that. Like I didn't expect that.
So this is like a B. This is better than all of the Marvel schlock and the
it's
and the
better
DC
than
stuff.
the Ant-Mans or whatever. I will say though, this upcoming week, there's the your boy Matt Damon and Ben Affleck's Air. Apparently that's a good movie, even though the trailers don't look like they're good. Like it's going to be a good movie. But setting that aside, the second movie I'm going to go watch this week is going to be the Super Mario Brothers, which apparently
we're going to see that too.
We have tickets on Sunday to go see that with the kids.
The early reviews are so-so, but that's not the thing. Do you think that in one of the like end credit scenes, they should settle this once and for all and reveal that Yoshi is a horse? Like, do you think they're going to get to that? Like, they should like work that in at the very end.
Won't.
Yoshi.
By the way, I have not seen him at all in any of the previews. I don't know if he's not in the final cut.
Yeah, I can't remember seeing Yoshi and Yoshi's. There's no way they're going to make a Super Mario Brothers movie without a Yoshi.
What is Yoshi? I mean, no one knows.
It's like a whole fucking species. He's a fucking dinosaur, Abe. God damn it. Not a horse.
He's hatched from an egg. He's
I
a
don't recall
dinosaur.
that.
He looks like a dinosaur because he is one.
A horse.
We're going to see that on Sunday with the kids.
Okay.
Did you see anything else? Or is that
that was it. Yeah, light movie week.
All right. We watched on after our Passover feast, we came home and ABC was playing 10 Commandments
the
on
second half of the 10 Commandments.
Regular broadcast TV.
I have not seen that. How was it?
It's bad.
Doesn't really hold up. Not a great movie.
Didn't it win like Academy
Awards?
Awards?
Who's terrible? Women. Women are terrible.
Oh, yeah.
Turns out the whole thing was women's fault.
Yeah, it's largely the shitty Queen of Egypt's fault. Definitely not any of the men involved. Definitely not at fault. I guess like by the standards of its day, it had some impressive special effects, and it was this big historical epic deal. But yeah, it appears to be mad at like the only person, as only just now occurred to me, the only Jew who looks like a Jew is the Jew who sucks in the movie.
Oh,
because otherwise it's like Charlton Heston, not very Jewish looking.
Okay.
All of the wives and women that matter to Moses.
They could all be Jewish.
They don't look terribly Jewish.
Representation matters now, Bob.
Yeah, right. But
it's colorblind casting is what that was.
The guy who gets kicked out of Egypt, he's some sort of governor type and has to go with the Jews and is angry at Moses and is trying to convince...
What is that guy's name? He's in a bunch of stuff.
He was trying to convince all of the other Jews to turn on Moses and make him in charge. That guy looks sort of Jewish.
Okay.
So it's funny that they blame the Jew-looking guy and the women are the heart of all of the conflict in this.
Edward G. Robinson. He's in so much.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway, it's not that good. You don't have to watch it.
Oh, well.
Anybody out there? Not that you were lining up to do so.
What else did we watch? We watched Succession, but what did we do on Friday?
Did we watch some trash on Netflix? Did we?
We did. We watched that the YouPorn thing.
The Pornhub
was that any
Netflix
good?
documentary, which is just on the depressing side of the porn documentary. If there's a titillating, depressing balance to pornography documentaries, this leans on the depressive side.
Fun.
And not particularly revealing. If you've read any of the coverage, like the Nicholas Kristof coverage around the
I had not.
The Pornhub stuff, then you won't have learned anything. And what you ultimately learn is that a lot of the activism around trying to get like revenge porn and child sexual imagery taken off the internet ends up redounding, unfortunately, on the pornographers themselves, on the low-level individual content creators. Surprising no one that the large mammoth corporation just continues to rake in money, and that the people who ultimately pay the price of these sorts of crusades to get pornography off the internet ends up being your workaday porn star.
I also learned that, what was this place? Pornhub? I learned that apparently everybody knew about Pornhub.
You never heard of Pornhub?
It's not that I'd never heard of it, but like I'd kind of never heard of it. They were acting like it's Snickers or
it is
HBO.
It is the Snickers of pornography.
Yeah. But it was acting like it was fucking McDonald's.
Right. Sure, but they have inserted themselves into the cultural conversation at every turn for the last decade plus.
But to hear that, it's like sitting here and everyone talking about McDonald's, and it's like, okay, I mean, you're saying it a lot, so now I've heard of it, but like, I don't think I've ever seen a McDonald's. It was a weird feeling for me.
Yeah.
Because I'm like on the internet. I don't know. It was weird.
I think she doth protest too much over here.
I just don't.
I will do no such protesting.
You have all the porn, whatever.
I do not.
Pornhub.
Describe that baseball player for me, Bob.
Oh, yeah. Lori wants me to describe a St. Louis Cardinal who I described yesterday as an individual named Tyler O'Neill. And I sent a text to my buddy Naveed. It brings me no pleasure to report that Tyler O'Neill looks like an enormous man-sized erect penis running around outside on a baseball field. Which is exactly what. And then I followed it up with, he's not ripped, he's turgid. Because this is an individual who looks like he's just bursting at attention when he's standing out there after getting a hit.
And then Bob had to rewind and be like, look at this.
Yeah, because Lori's giving me like the, you just think he's a big old cock because you like big old cocks.
What I was giving him
I was like,
was
this guy legitimately looks like a big erect penis out there.
So he wanted to make sure that he saw again, and I also saw the man-size erect penis running around. And mostly he's just kind of hairless.
He has no hair, and
I gotta have to look this guy up. Ryan O'Neill.
He's got a very like. He clearly focuses on arm and shoulder day more than anything else. Player. So he sort of looks like the reason that he's an erect penis is because he's almost wobbly. Like you can kind of see where like his stems are in the ground, but he might kind of bend.
Anyway, Bob watches a lot of porn.
That's not what I just have. Look, I don't see a lot of ripped dudes and think, oh man, erect penises. It's just that this one guy in particular looks like just a massive hard-on running around out there. There's no getting around it. And I dare you to look upon Tyler O'Neill and think anything different moving forward. We also watched Succession, episode 2 of season 4.
They got to pick up the pace. Too much lollygagging.
It was fine, perfectly enjoyable in terms of everything that I like about the show, which is the clever dialogue and Roman being funny and
wow, this guy is
everything
yoked.
else.
Boy, go on.
Right? He is. He's a big erect dude, and it's not like. There's something about the way that he's ripped that, especially when you see him running around out there, he doesn't look like your typical muscle. He looks like somebody's squeezing him, and all of the, like he's bursting. Like
anyway, Bob watches a lot of porn.
No, it's not. Look, you don't have to interact with a lot of porn to understand what an erection looks like. All right, Lori?
You don't.
I know that surprises you.
He's one of these born shirtless guys.
Oh, I'm sure he is. Yeah. Anyway, Succession, episode 2, totally fine, right? Nothing further to report?
No. I'm telling you, they need to move it along. I know this is the last season, but come on. More action. There's too much, let's make a deal, and somebody stab somebody.
That's the whole show.
Yeah, but this more, it's just taking too long.
These writers love these characters, and they love doing things to these characters, and like that's all fine and good. But again, this is a plot. This is a BBC show that could have been done in like 12 episodes over there, and you'd be finished and done with it.
Right. Instead
of getting 4 goddamn years and 40 episodes or whatever we're going to end up with here by the end. You got anything else for us tonight, Abe?
Nope.
Well, I guess that's all we've got for tonight then. We will talk to you next time.
Later. This new show, I've only seen like an episode or 2 on Netflix. It's like Wellmania or something. Like there's this, there's like this aggressively obnoxious like main character. Like she kind of reminds me of like Kenny Parker, but there's something off about her. But so far it's okay. I'll report on that show next week.
It's my birthday on Monday, so
we're
doing
look at
what
that.
I want this weekend.
This is that April stretch. Isn't Chris's birthday around this time too?
Emily is tomorrow.
That's right. Yes. Emily's birthday is
and then Chris,
tomorrow.
Chris fucking sucks, so it doesn't really matter when his birthday is.
But yeah, there's like a lot of birthdays.
Andrew is the 17th.
Yeah. Oh, look at that.
It's quite a stretch.
What are you going to be, Lori? Are you like 39 or something?
I'm like 39 or something. Yeah.
She'll be 40.
Oh, the big 4-0.
I like the way he said it.
Yeah. Did you see this thing about the IRS trying to buy up one of those internet data suckers?
No. They didn't. I guess they didn't.
IRS wants to buy internet mass monitoring tool. U.S. military and FBI have previously bought access to NetFlow data from a company called Team Simru. Now the IRS wants to buy products from the company too.
Oh. Was this like an InfoWars or something, or like a legit outlet?
I saw it at Vice, I think, was where I first saw it.
I'm going to go with like 39 or something all year.
Yeah. Anyway. All right.
Good night.
Good night.
To be like easy to explain, like murder or like rape or like kidnapping, like very to the point.